Right, this is an old BSA Ultra multi-shot, the MMC version. The first thing you want to do is make sure that there's absolutely no air left in it. I don't know if there's any air in this one. Nope, it's empty. You can basically empty them by just dry firing them until there's no air coming out. Next step is to remove the trigger block, which the trigger mechanism. There's two screws in these usually. Normally 3mm Allen key, sometimes 3mm and a 4mm, but it's fairly straightforward, nothing too tricky there. There is sometimes an anti-tamper cap in here. I do have videos on removing that if need be. These are both 3mm. This gun hasn't been apart and it's quite old, so I don't really know what I'm going to find. Right, that's the trigger mechanism out the way. Right, the next thing you can do is get yourself a 10mm spanner to remove this stock fixing stud. Right, that comes off, your MMC cocking mechanism comes off. Right, there's your action. Now, there's a number of ways you can go about this. I use just a pokey device. You can see there's a spring in there that needs to come out. I normally find if you put something in near the top and then lever it down into the spring, that spring pops out like that. Put the spring to one side. Right, then the next step, loosen off this little knob. Sometimes they are Loctited or glued on by BSA. There's a number of ways you can do that. I'll show you one now. If it is glued on, you can just put it back on. You can gently warm this with a hair dryer or a little heat gun. Don't go too mad because it's in plastic. You don't want to melt the plastic. You just want it warmed up locally just to soften the glue. I would recommend using some leather or lead or something around that, and then also, very important, also hold it with another pair of pliers or something here, because if you try and unwind this and there is it basically can twist the probe and it can cause damage internally, so make sure you hold this before you try and loosen this. Otherwise, yep, you could cause damage. Put that out the way. Right, and we'll pop this back in. Right, because we've taken the spring out, it's not locking in, so I've just done it manually there. Right, there's a 3mm Allen key, grub screw in here. So take that out. Sometimes when you take that out, the whole back end shoots out, so just be careful of that. This one hasn't. I think it's a bit old and gummed up, but anyway, this is a two-piece hammer tube. As you can see, that piece has come off on its own. On the newer ones, this from here to here is one piece, so bear that in mind. There are different types, but generally they work pretty much the same. There we go, that's where the adjuster lives. There's a hammer spring and a spring guide, and there's a hammer in there. That's the trigger sear pin. That's the hammer that shoots forward when you fire. Right, get them out the way. Right, now there is a grub screw in here. It's normally a 3mm. If you've got the single piece hammer tube, this wouldn't have come off right now, but there is it's gone backwards, that doesn't help. There is normally on the single piece hammer tubes, there's another hole here, which you can put a 3mm Allen key into to loosen off the bolt that I'm about to loosen off now. If you've got the two-piece, obviously it's not a problem because it's out the way, but you loosen that off. I'm going to take it right off because I'm going to strip this one right down once I've finished the video. If you were, in fact, if you're just fitting a regulator, you don't need to do this part. So, you know, don't strip it more than you need to. Right, now that I've removed that pin and the spring, I'm now going to relieve the pressure on, because there's the probe's under pressure. I'm going to really relieve the pressure. Oops, sorry, skipped a step. There is a pin in here, which this little release pivots on. You want to push that out. Okay, you can see I've just pushed that out quite simply. Sometimes they are quite tight and you need to tap them out. Obviously be careful that you don't hit this part with a hammer because it's brittle and it will probably break. You want to put something in the slot. I find a flat bladed screwdriver works quite well. Put it in the slot gently and then just gently tap it with a hammer, and that should drift the pin out. Right, back to where I was before. You want to relieve the pressure on that, wiggle this and pull it out. Okay, once that's out, that'll spring free. If you've got to this point and this isn't coming out, check that you've removed that, because if you haven't removed that, this won't come out. These can sometimes be a bit tight. Right, and then there's a spring in there as well that normally lives in there. Right, on this one we again, pokey device, magazine slot, just poke in there. Now you can see the screw that's in there. Before we did that, it was blocked off and there was no access for an Allen key. Again, 3mm, get it down in there. These can be tight. Just to note, when you tighten these back up, just be careful, because if you overdo them, you can strip the threads in the firing valve body, because it's soft brass on the newer ones. It's steel on these older ones, so it's a bit more forgiving. Right, so loosen that right off. Then while you're holding it all together, tip it upside down, otherwise you'll be crawling around on your hands and knees looking for little ball bearings and things. Right, if you hadn't drained down the air, if you get to this point, this would still be full of air, but it won't, you know, no air will be going anywhere. It's all contained within this bit. Right, this one, as you can tell, it's got a rubber band on it. The customer, that this popped out by itself. Anyway, so get that out of the way. Right. Transfer port. If you are fitting a regulator, there's a good chance that you'll either have to swap this for one with a larger hole, or you want to take this one out to drill it. If you haven't removed the magazine release catch, this will not come out. The number of these that I've seen full of plier marks and things with people trying to pull them out while this is still in, it won't come out, because that sits in that little slot. There are a couple of different shapes of these, but generally the ends are the same and the O-rings are the same. It's just that they are slightly different shape, but they do exactly the same job. So remember to pull that out. Right, this one is there's a little ball and a spring. There's a tiny little spring. Make sure you put that somewhere safe. And then there's a little ball in there, which rides in this little notch in the magazine release catch. So put them somewhere safe. Right, that's about as far as you need to strip this. Obviously you didn't need to remove the probe and all of that. I was just showing you that in case you wanted to give the gun a clean and service. And right, this one's been drained down. If you didn't drain it down, like you were told to at the beginning, you could use something, I don't know, for example, a punch or something that will fit in here and push the firing valve. It's quite tight. If there's air in it, it will be very tight, to the point where you will probably have to thump it on a table or something to release it. But be very careful when you do that, because obviously you're then releasing however many 100 bar are in the cylinder, and it'll all come out of this transfer port hole, and it'll come out with a great force. So when I do it, if I haven't been able to drain it down for whatever reason, I wrap a towel around the cylinder, just to try and contain some of the air and the noise, because it can be very loud. So yeah, just be careful. Once you've got all the air out, it should strip down fairly easily. Right, there we go. This is an older one, like I said. The newer ones have a brass firing valve body that fits into the one-piece tube. The one-piece tube would be kind of like that, and this whole bit would come out and be separate. If you look in the single shot or the Ultra SE, Scorpion SE videos, you'll see what I mean. Same as the one in the R10. Right, you will need to pop this cap off to get the restrictor out. I've got a little tool to do this, but if you don't have a little tool, as most of you won't, you could use something like a pair of long nose pliers. You know, it'll fit in the two holes, and then just undo it. Try not to damage it, obviously. Right, in here, there's the brass restrictor. Your rifle should have one of these. If it doesn't, chances are somebody's tried to FAC it at some stage in its life. And then inside here, long nose pliers. That's the knock-off valve or firing valve, or it goes by many names. Just make sure it's in good condition and it's clean. Generally, if you get air leaking out your barrel, excuse me, out your barrel, it's because this face is damaged or got some dirt in it or something. Also clean inside there. You could use cotton buds or whatever. Make sure it's nice and clean, and then put it back together, which is basically a reverse. You know, pop that in, pop the spring back in, don't fit that back in, screw the cap back on, nip it back up, and then you'll get to this point, and then it's time to fit the regulator. I'll just hang on a second. One I made earlier. This is a Huma regulator for the BSAs. Let's put this back on. Right, you may find with these older ones, because these caps are quite a bit larger on the older models, the newer models have a much slimmer, thinner one. You can replace them, they are interchangeable. Some rigs you may find that this is too thick and you may need to change it, but generally speaking it should fit. It just basically reduces the amount of volume regulated air behind the regulator if you leave the big cap on. Shouldn't be a problem on any of the 2.2s, certainly not the 177 Scorpion. Maybe the 177 Ultra. If you're trying to get the power up, you may want to put the slimmer cap in, or machine some of that off. I mean, it really is fat. I think that you could probably take 3 or 4 mils off that and it would still be fine. So yep, reg screws on, cylinder screws on. Obviously make sure all the O-rings are nice and clean everywhere and in good condition, because you don't want to put it back together and find that it's leaking. So there we go, that's stripping an old multi-shot MMC Ultra.